welcome to Real Talk episode 63. I'm Todd, this is AJ,
Yo.
and we're back.
Here we are.
Let's dive in. I've been told that people like when we just get to it. Okay, gosh. All right, so if you're new to Real Talk, I'll make it brief as I can. Good English. What is Real Talk? Real Talk's an opportunity to talk about God, life, the Bible, and invite you guys in on that conversation. But here's the cool thing. Topics and questions are at least partially supplied by you. How do they do that, AJ?
They go to our anonymous link that we provide for them. It's www.theremnant.life/real-talk. You guys can go in there anytime, submit a topic or question, and we'll answer it on either this web series or on our live show on Thursdays.
He's right. So again, I'll say that you can do, if you're on the podcast, you can type that in your phone as well at www.theremnant.life/real-talk. If you're watching via Facebook or one of our other
YouTube
social media
whatever
platforms, there may be a link right there, up above, to the left. I don't know. It depends on what you're watching it on. Mm-hmm. So click it, and there you go. That's it.
Business is done.
We can now begin. So, everyone, we usually like to start a show by just kind of seeing how our week's been. So, how's your week been?
Very interesting. I feel like God's been speaking to me a lot this week. You know, I know last week I came in talking about, time, because that's kind of been my recurring theme of, stuff happening to me or just the thoughts I've been having. It's been about time and the concept of it and how, it's passing by. And I kind of got hit with something different lately, which is cool. I think God's trying to teach me a lot. And what I love about God is he tends to make things so you can just tell, right? Like you can tell the difference between you trying to create your own answers to life, and then there's times where you can actually literally feel when God goes, "Hey, this is something." And we tend to refer to that as like a Kairos moment, right? A moment in time where it seems like life just kind of stops. And like, what does this mean? Like you can just feel God intervening. And I kind of had this thought earlier today about, for me, as me personally, I tend to be numb in the sense of feelings and processing things. And the thing is I know that I'm not numb. I know that I feel things. I think for me, I tend to use being numb as, I don't want to say an excuse, but it's part of my process of loving people sometimes. But then I also get caught up in the idea of maybe that's not loving people. So God, I feel like God's really trying to teach me, what it means to have the balance of telling people what you're feeling and just letting things go, choosing your battles. We kind of talk about that every once in a while, choosing your battles, picking them and seeing, what is worth fighting over and what's not. And for me, just being hit with that was encouraging in a way, because I was like, when people tend to ask me how I'm doing, I just kind of go, "Oh, I'm good," and I'm not lying. Like I'm pretty good usually. I'm usually a pretty upbeat guy, but I also know there's always underlying things that I tend to not speak about or what I'm feeling, and I think it's because those feelings are being caused by such small things that, to me, I think my mind goes, they're not worth even like going into, right? Like they're not worth telling people, "Hey, this is what's going on," because it's like, well, that's going to pass. I'm fine. And a rule that I've heard you say before, which I love, and is, if something is bothering you after 24 hours after it's happening, you should probably talk to that person, or it's something that you need to talk about. So I just kind of been processing through that, and just the idea of being numb, and, if it's used for good, if it's used for bad, if it's both, or just how that whole process works. And I think God's slowly just trying to reveal, like, what it means to me, I guess. So that's kind of where I'm at. As far as other things in life, man, like, it's been interesting, still not back to work yet as far as the local shoe store. Haven't really heard anything from them. So just kind of chilling, doing church stuff, making videos for you guys, doing Real Talk. Just interesting. It's interesting that when you're involved in people's lives, especially in a workplace, like, you see them every week, and then when time passes and something like this happens where you don't see them, it's interesting because you don't really like hear from anybody. We have like a little app that we use where everyone kind of like has like they're all in one chat, It's been over a month, and I think I've only seen maybe like 2 or 3 messages in this entire time. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And I was one who sent one. I was like, hey, just miss you guys. Just letting you know. So very interesting how that works. So, but I'm doing pretty good, man. It's I don't know. As we slowly come back to being normal with this whole COVID thing seeming to be slowing down, people seem to be kind of at least putting it off of their minds less and less as we move forward. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. That's another thing that's been in my mind. I'm curious to see how society's going to act afterwards, especially once we're officially like in the clear to see what's going to happen. So yeah, those are some of the things that have kind of been in my head, and just Jesus, man. We talked about, last week we had a question about the TV series, The Chosen, and I had the opportunity to watch episodes 1 and 2, and man, Jesus is just so powerful, man, and the way they portray him in that show, I just love the way they fill the gaps, because I know for readers sometimes, people are such visualizers, and they can somehow sometimes kind of hop around, and for them to just be able to fill the gaps in so well, and it just feels so real, man, and I love it. And like to me, it portrays Jesus in a way that I've never seen before. Even in my own reading, I'm like, man, like that is Jesus, and made me so hopeful and just loved, man. Like that guy, to what an opportunity this life is to be like him. And I feel like we so often look at the negative, like we look at the negative side of, well, we can't ever be like Jesus because Jesus was perfect. But how incredible is it that we even have the opportunity to? And I don't think we tend to think it that way. So,
yeah, it's interesting that you said that. So I was talking to a kid yesterday, actually, and he, good kid, and he was talking about his brother. And he got mad because his brother was eating the Cheetos, which he said were his Cheetos. Okay. Like, even though he didn't buy them, his mother did. Point is, he gets upset about this.
Okay.
And so I asked him, and he was a Christian, believes. I said, and he's only 10, 11, I don't even know, 10, I think. And he said, I said, hey, well, do you think Jesus... Like, what would Jesus say about sharing his Cheetos? Do you think he would share his Cheetos, or he'd be mad that the guy's eating some of his Cheetos? And he didn't say anything. I was like, no, seriously. He kept trying. I was like, I'm not mad. I'm genuinely curious what you think, what he would do. Well, he would be okay with it, And then he goes, but I mean, I can't be like him. We're not going to be completely like him. And the point of that is, and we talked about that, like that, I tried to make an example to him. I was like, okay, well, what if I want to, I used his mom because I know his mom's like, if I get mad at your mom and I want to punch your mom, because would Jesus punch your mom? Well, no. When he's mad, no. Okay, well, what if I wanted to? And I just said it's because I can't be like Jesus, so I just justify. Point is that in his honesty, I think he does what a lot of people do, and they use the divinity of Jesus as a cop-out to pursue being like Jesus.
That's so good.
And it actually makes me mad when people tell me that. Like, not for themselves, but if they try to make me feel better about saying, like, well, you're not, I'm like, well, that doesn't make me feel better, because he is the standard,
That's right.
And even though I fail, and I do many, many times, and yes, I don't want to condemn myself, I never want to get comfortable not pursuing being like him.
Right.
And so that was interesting you brought that up, based on this thing I just had about the Cheetos last night.
That's so crazy, man.
And I agree with you. I think a lot of people, I don't know, they give up because they know. It goes back to what we said a couple weeks ago on whether it was Real Talk Live or here.
Yeah. Is
the idea that because we know, like, we're waiting to feel like doing the right thing all the time, and because we know inside we don't, even in our best days, we don't feel like doing it, we give up. So like, maybe I'm being generous, but inside I don't want to be generous. So I'm like, well, I'm never going to be. I'm never going to be like Jesus because I don't naturally want to do it. And I don't necessarily think you're going to naturally want to do all the things he does, because we have a sinful nature, right? Romans 7 talks about that, that battle we kind of have.
Right.
The rest is coming to knowing that, God is going to finish the good work he started in you. But that was interesting that you said that in the Cheeto
funny,
conversation.
Dude. I had no idea that happened. I love that.
It's
what
pretty
a cool
cool
little thing.
Yeah.
You said cool at the same time. How's your week been?
Pretty good. I had some. So one, I feel like I always end up kind of confessing one thing that I'm struggling or wrestling through. So I've said several times over the past few weeks that I am feeling like kind of shy, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
Which is not my personality. Or at least withdrawn a little, or I'm comfortable. I don't want to be comfortable not being around people. That's why I said shy, because it wasn't necessarily that I even enjoy being alone. It's just, shy. Well, you and I had a talk, and you kind of said yesterday morning, you're like, man, I want you to, talk about things, because I haven't been talking about my own stuff as much.
Yeah.
Other than here, which again for me is weird because I'm typically a verbal processor. Well, then last night it was actually Mandy, kind of said the same thing. Like, you don't talk to people. The whole point of that is that you can't deny it if more than one person is saying. So that's been interesting. Is when people ask me what's going on, I don't really know the answer. Other than I'm in my head. Multiple people said I'm in my head a lot, which is true. And I don't know why. I know a lot of it is my faith. I'm wrestling a lot with my faith right now. Which is kind of then leads to this chosen, which, because I also watched another episode.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, you had said, I've never thought of him that way before, which is cool.
Yeah.
And there are some parts that I think that way for me too, like the humor and the the humanness.
Little wink he did. Yeah. I love that so much.
But here's the weird part, man. I don't mean this arrogantly. That is the Jesus that I know. Because when I was brought to my attention again yesterday, and I'll try to make this brief, but I want to be real. So I think when I became a Christian, and I've said this before, but in case you're listening on the podcast or something for the first time, I did not grow up in a Christian home at all. I was not churched.
That's right.
We weren't against it, but we certainly, like I said, who I thought Jesus was far different than the Jesus of the Bible. And I thought he was for the wealthy, and, you had to have everything together and have your act together, or at least look that way.
Right.
Well, when I came to know Jesus at this event that I got invited to, they gave me a Bible that only had Psalms and the New Testament in it. Or Proverbs and New Testament, one of the two. Anyway, I literally read the New Testament. And I'm not saying this is the right way to go, because I believe the best thing would have been for me to get churched, like be in church in that time. I believe that. Yeah. Because I would have avoided a lot of pitfalls if I'd have been around other believers. But for the first 2-3 years of my faith of coming to know Jesus, I just read the New Testament. I just had the New Testament. So the Jesus that I read about, that is how I envision him. When I started reading and the things he said to people, it wasn't filtered through a lens of what people told me he was. It was just what I was seeing. So, and this is going to sound weird, man. Like if you can read that, and I can't do it now, right? I can't do it the same way. When I read that with fresh eyes, I didn't come into it thinking that when he said everything he said was condemning. And I think a lot of times now the Jesus that we portray, because I don't think we necessarily do it intentionally, but we're so driven to make sure that we're not sinning, other people aren't sinning, everybody's doing the right thing, that we read everything he says as disapproving, right? Everything Jesus said is in a disapproving tone. Well, when I first read it, that isn't how I read it, because I was coming from it thinking he disapproved of everything anyway. And then I started reading it and I was like, what do you mean you're willing? What do you mean you love these people? What do you mean you love me? What do you mean that you're not going to let me go? What do you mean that, all of these things that you don't want to condemn me? So, I teared up. I've teared up several times, not in this weird, overly emotional way, because I think I want that emotional feeling when I'm watching The Chosen, for instance, right? Yeah. It's not necessarily that, but I teared up at times because I had this realization, and I don't mean to be dramatic, but this is, if I'm being real, this is where I'm at, of a conviction, but not, because typically when I do things, it's always in the context of ministry. Like, I'm sorry, darn it, God, I'm sorry, Jesus, that I'm not portraying you right to other people. Or maybe I was harsh when I shouldn't have been. Or Lord, I want to make sure that I'm, portraying you right and being right and leading right. And it was this sense of no, this is for you, Todd. Like, you need to remember who I am. You need to remember that that's how I am with you. That when I say to, in the show, when I say that, when he says that verse from Isaiah, that you are mine, you are redeemed, I believe that for you. And that's freeing. And I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm in this weird place of remembering, I don't know, man, living free. And I feel like I say this a lot, and it's real. In fact, one of the people said, they don't edit. We don't. But I don't want to, in the midst of doing church, lose Jesus. And I don't mean that in a dramatic way. Like, clearly I'm not going to lose him. I'm not going to lose my salvation. But I mean, I don't want to forget who he is for me. And I don't want to forget, just loving people. It's one thing to pursue love of other people as a commandment. And it's another thing to pursue love of other people because you love them. You see what I'm saying by that? That's probably, I don't mean that to be as deep as it probably sounds, but that's I think sometimes even I can pursue loving other people as I have to.
Like a duty.
Yeah. And sometimes that is, right? When people are your enemies, but I don't know. There's a shift happening in my heart because I'm also very self-condemning. Because the standard is Jesus in my mind, I can get caught up in.
Yes.
And in the position I'm in, reality is people are mad at me all the time. All the time. When you're a leader, we talk about this at our church all the time. Our kind of short theory on leadership, or our, what's that word I'm looking for? Theory. Blake's helping us out today. Thesis. Nice word. What's that word? Motto? Yeah. Motto for leadership is weight. So if you're not feeling weight, then you're not leading, right? And I think that, I don't know, when you're already self-condemning and then you're trying to run around please everyone instead of run around loving everyone, you just end up beating yourself up all the time. And then on top of that, you got other people outside. I don't know, you can end up letting Christians speak for Christ to you. And unfortunately, because humans are flawed, they don't always say the same thing, right? What Christians say isn't always what Jesus says.
Yep.
So, I didn't mean to go on forever, but honestly, it's a cool thing where I'm at. Most of it, I think the quiet part or the shy part isn't necessarily good. I think I've kind of retreated, but I think there's a work happening in my heart right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But in the midst of that, I still hate it because then I still get mad at stuff. Like, that I don't want to get mad at. But it's easier for me to overcome that. And it really, I don't even want to say this because then people are going to judge that I'm doing it, but I will say it so other people can hear kind of like that we put this into practice. It's made me like approach every situation and intentionally. So even before I came in today, we had worked out this morning. I was like, I want to love people. I'm going to do it. And I don't want to get caught up. Sometimes I feel like people are going to think, this is going to sound weird, I'm corny if I say things like, man, I'm so happy to see you. Even though that like when someone says that to me, I don't go, they're being corny. But for some reason, when I want to say it to other people, I feel like they're going to be like, he's not meaning it. So then I don't say it.
Genuine or something.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like so I am beginning to, I don't know, pursue that again. So I'm excited.
That's so good, man.
End of thesis.
Nice.
Sometimes AJ gives me a fake laugh and I point it out. Just like he just did. This is what he does when he fake laughs. I'm right, Blake.
My only true genuine laugh is sounding like
they've heard it.
What do you call it? I don't know.
A wheeze is what you call it.
A wheeze, which is also can sound like a tea kettle. Like it's like a whatever you call it. I don't know what it's called. Mm-hmm. Steam kettle. I don't know. That's ridiculous when I get real high pitched.
Steam kettle.
I don't know what it's called.
A steam kettle. Yeah.
Whatever it is, or it could be a whistle. Who knows? Anyways,
be curious what you guys think. When you don't give me the Christianese answer, because I think not that what do I mean by Christianese too? I should say this.
Yeah.
We use this a lot, and I feel like people then twist it like anything else. Christianese does not mean that the things that we say aren't true. It's that when we say them as just a platitude, we say them as just a saying instead of actually believing it. So if I say, does Jesus love you? Do you think Jesus loves you? And you automatically go, yes, even though you don't think that, you don't slow down.
Right.
Because you think that's what you're supposed to say.
Exactly.
That becomes Christianese, a language we speak without anything behind it. So when I ask this question, I'm curious what you guys, do you live out of when you think of Jesus, what's the word that comes to your mind? We'd love to see. Drop that in the comments below.
I love that.
Or if you're on the podcast, shoot it in on the link and just say, from podcast, this is the word. Whatever.
Yes, we'll see it.
Yes, we will.
There it was. That was a real one. Oh, come on. You gotta give me that. That was funny.
What is happening right now? We got business AJ today.
We got business AJ.
Come on, man.
Am I ever really?
That was funny.
Come on, man. Let's go. Come on. That was funny.
Let's cut this. Anyway, yeah.
I'm not cutting it. We're raw.
I almost spit it.
I was gonna say something. I don't know what I was
I'm sorry, man. It's my fault.
No, it's okay. I just don't. It was. Dang it. Oh, substance. That's what it was. Like, there's no substance behind what people like when they're saying those things. Like,
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, Christian. Like when I think.
And I can do it too, man.
Oh, absolutely. We all can. Like when I think of Christianity, like not Christianity, Christianese. I think of there's no substance behind what they're saying. Like, it's like they're not actually behind the cause when they say it, or at least in the moment. Like they just. Like it's out there and then they just go back to whatever. Like there's no true belief behind what they're thinking or what they're saying. That's kind of how I think of it. I think people want to, but they don't always.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Christianese comes from. It's just like when people think of when I think of Christianese, I think of it as being like a sense, and not directly in the sense of, but like a what do you call it? Boy,
I know, man. My mind wasn't thinking earlier either.
It's similar to what people think, like a cliche.
There you go. Good word. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a cliche.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, I think it sounds like God's kind of telling us both the same thing, which is cool. And like, darn it, Todd, stop. So it's interesting I just love Jesus. And man, I encourage you guys, if you're struggling in your faith, you're a believer, you feel dry, you feel empty, join us, because I know we both do this, and I'm doing this right now, is go back to the Gospels and truly let yourself remember this person, this God man who loves you so much. And man, it is an amazing thing. And when you watch shows like that, even, I think the beauty of it too, and why it can make us emotional, is that is his heart towards us.
Yes.
And man, cool stuff. Cool stuff. I feel like we're doing a promo for that show all the time.
It's a great show.
Chosen director guy. Hey, we'll give you a shout out. Say hi to us.
Yeah, say hi, I guess. I don't know your name. If I did,
I think it's Dallas something.
Dallas? What a cool
Pretty sure that's what it was. Dallas something. You don't believe me, do you?
No, I
think it's Dallas Jenkins. Wait, can you look that up?
Don't believe me, dude. I looked at you. That's all I did.
Yeah. Jesus, man. That's something I know. AJ and I have been saying a lot.
Yes.
Sometimes he said that to me this morning in a text. Dallas Jenkins, Todd Bland.
Dude.
I know my names.
That's awesome.
Listen, I don't have many gifts, but one of them is a near photographic memory. That's a fact.
Yeah, that's
a lot of people
dude.
don't believe me, though.
Your memory is uncanny.
Because here's the problem. When you have an almost photographic memory, if you have one, that doesn't mean perfect memory.
Right.
Because that's why I add nearly. So the one time I get something incorrect, it was like, you don't have a good memory. Yes, I do. You know who you are when you argue with me about memory.
I actually don't know who this is. I'm intrigued.
It's not you, because you admit freely that you don't have.
My memory's awful.
Yeah. Anyway.
Some days I wake up and I'm like, where am I?
I have one other topic that I'm hesitant. I kept wrestling.
Okay.
And I figured, why not just say it?
Let's do it.
We'll try to answer a couple questions after this.
Okay.
So one of the beautiful things about Real Talk is we've gotten to engage in discussions with people that aren't even necessarily of our belief, which is part of what we wanted to do. We wanted to make this a place where it's like, first of all, we're Christians, but that doesn't mean we hate you if you're not. It doesn't mean we're not open to conversation. It doesn't mean that we're arrogant, man. We are. I'm sure there are times I am, but certainly we don't live there. Sort of disappointing. We put out, our church puts out a thing this week, and sometimes I struggle sometimes to know how to interact with people of differing belief systems when they seem so angry at Christianity. Okay. In specifics. So I don't want to, call any specific people or person out, but sometimes I love to enter into a good debate, especially if people are open to that, because I love to learn. That's one of the things. Sometimes people, when I get passionate, but if you can show me where I'm wrong, I love to learn. I love to know things. And,
Right.
Man, there's some of the dialogue that's happened recently with some people, has been a little disappointing because you can tell when someone's genuine and when someone just wants to attack a certain faith, like Christianity. It's so interesting to me because I know for a fact, whether they admit it or not, the amount of anger and frustration and kind of spitting poison towards it shows that there's hurt there. I don't care what anyone says because, anger is a secondary emotion in this thing. So it's coming from something. And I'm always like, man, I wish we could get to the point or the place with this person or people where we could talk about what really happened that tainted your view of our faith to the point that you not only have questions, you want to attack. You want to constantly look for the flaws, and that's a bummer,
like how
man.
do people get there?
Yeah, and a lot of times I'm sure it's legitimate hurt that's happened.
Absolutely.
So it comes full circle because I always want to make sure that I go back to Jesus, man. I always want to make sure that I'm filled with grace and love towards those people. But sometimes what's tough is even when you do that, they take that as arrogance because you're not entering into the dialogue. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. No, man, that makes sense to me.
That's one other thing that's happened recently that I've just kind of been thinking of, how am I going to enter into those things? I think for me, what I tend to do...
It's not easy.
No, it's not. And I think one of the things I'm trying to do is I'll enter into them until it gets to the point when I know that now we're just fighting.
Sure.
It's not about hearing anymore.
Well, dude, that kind of reminds me of Jesus to an extent. Like when he's in the synagogues and he's talking about, and he's preaching, and then the Pharisees will come up and ask him these questions, and he gives them some harsh truth, and they get mad at him. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna stone him," and he backs off. He flees. He's like, "Okay, nope, I'm done."
You're not gonna do that.
Exactly. Like I think it's kind of similar in the sense of like we talk, we go, we do what we can until, like you said, it gets to that point. That's when it's not worth it anymore, and you take a step back. I think Jesus kind of shows us that in a way. Like,
yeah, it's interesting, man. So that was it.
Then he found $5.
Yeah, I found $5.
But yeah, man, that is interesting. I'll have to give that some more thought.
Alrighty. Why did I make that voice? Let's go ahead and we'll go dive into some questions today. Hey, I know we said this on live. I don't know if we did this pre-record. If we did, forgive me, podcast people. I just want to give a shout out to the podcast person who is anonymous. We don't really know. I think their tag name was Freed by Christ. Review.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Thanks so much for that positive review and encouragement. We want to recognize you and say, I think that's our first podcast review. We've gotten a lot from people who, well, not our first podcast review, but someone who hasn't just watched it on Facebook too.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. So thank you so much. Shout out to you if you're listening. Man, we love you. We appreciate you.
Yes, such a blessing, such a huge encouragement. That's one of the. It's so cool because that's one of the first reviews we've gotten where it was like, hey, they've never met us before, and they just felt like they were sitting in the room with us, just having a conversation, and that's literally what the show is supposed to be. So when I have my doubts and moments of like, was this worth it? It is, because at least one person felt like what we wanted them to feel like, and that's so cool. So thank you so much for letting us know it.
And it's good, because one of the things about this is we don't always get that feedback to know whether it's positive. So that's awesome. Just want to give a shout out to that. Absolutely. All right, diving in. We got a question here, and she signed her name, so I can say it.
Nice.
Kathy, you know who you are?
Thanks
because
for the question,
you know your name,
Kathy.
and you know your own name. So I just want to say thanks for this question. She signed her name, so I'll say it. She says, my son and I are reading the book of Daniel. In the beginning of the book, all 4 of the young men were given new names in the Babylonian court. Instead of having Israelite names, they were changed to Babylonian names. Their Israelite names honor God. Their Babylonian names honor false gods. Daniel, which means God is my judge, becomes Belshazzar, which means may Bel protect his life. Bel was a pagan god. Hananiah, my God / Yahweh is gracious, became Shadrach, command of Aku, Marduk, another god. Mishael, which means who is what God is, became Meshach, who is like Aku, Marduk again, false gods. Azariah, which means Yahweh has helped, is a helper, became Abednego, servant of the Shining One, Nebo, another god. It would appear that both their Hebrew and pagan names are used at various times in the story of Daniel. Finally, to the questions. But thank you for the background,
Awesome.
Kathy. Finally, to the questions. Why do Christians in books, sermons, etc. refer to Daniel by his Hebrew name, but the three friends by their pagan names? We know that the three men stayed faithful to the one true God, so why do we use their pagan names that don't bring honor to God, but to false gods?
I have no idea. That's a very interesting question.
Well, we got this question right before live, so I actually saw this one ahead of time, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And Kathy, this is the best answer I have for you. And what a great question.
Yeah.
What I love about this is someone not just Christianese, but actually asking questions.
Yes.
And I think God's pleased with that too. I honestly, the best answer I have, and to be fair, the book does refer to them both sometimes.
It kind of goes back and forth, right? That's what I thought.
But that makes sense too, because a lot of times it's referring to what the Babylonians would say to them.
Right.
Now, the point of this story, in case those don't know, is that they all stayed faithful, even though what was trying to happen here is kind of what Paul said, which is tries to warn us against, which is allowing culture to change you. So they said, we'll even give them a different name to change their culture. Well, they stayed faithful throughout it, so it didn't matter. And God ended up performing some incredible miracles with that. That's the fiery furnace.
That's right.
All those things. This is the best answer I have for this. I think it's just because it flows off the tongue. Right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Like, it's just, I think that's the only thing I think of.
Interesting.
It's just one of those things where it all flows out of the tongue. And
now,
as far as why we as Christians refer to, because that's true. We call Daniel. We don't call him Belshazzar, but we call them by their pagan names. I think that's just probably somewhere along the line, someone's telling the story. It just kind of flows along, right?
Right. And I think
otherwise it would be,
I can't.
Hananiah,
I've read through
Mishael.
Daniel once, and
That's right.
If I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but I feel like they go with their so like Daniel and the names that they have. It's only towards the beginning of the book that they refer to that. After that, they're only referred to as the.
So people sort of forget
pagan,
too.
I think.
But her point, that's what's interesting though. And maybe we call Daniel because it's called the book of Daniel.
That's
so it's
possible.
easier to.
Right, like in the sense of the story of the book, like refer to him as Daniel. The book's called Daniel, and the other three, like instead of bouncing back and forth, just keep it there so they understand who they're referring to.
But I think it's a great point.
Oh yeah.
Such a cool story. If you haven't got a chance to listen to, there's a song that I absolutely love. Another in the Fire. Is that Hillsong United? I think it is. Hillsong United. I think. I'm just going by the song, people, so I don't want to get into any sort of theological debate here. But the song is really beautiful, and I encourage you to go listen to it. It sort of references that in God for us, so it's pretty cool. All right, AJ, I'll ask you now. I'll actually go with this. I was reading my Bible and realized there's a lot of verses that talk about listening for God in the silence. I'm almost constantly listening to worship music when I do my devotionals. Is that a bad thing?
I don't think so. When it refers to listening for God in the silence, I don't think it necessarily means while you're studying. I think that means that when you're not hearing him in the moment, right? So like a lot of verses that talk about listening for God in the silence. I think when you're not feeling God's presence, when you're in the midst of, sin, or you feel like you might mess up, all these things, I think that's what it's referring to. What is faith? That's what always brings me back to. Faith is, believing in something that you can't see. And I think that also goes back to believing in something that you don't always feel, and that's what makes us that's what separates true believers from what we call the paper Christians, the ones, who just go off and do whatever they want because they just act out of their feelings. They don't really care what they're hearing. You've referred to God being in a room with you all the time, and sometimes you just crank the volume up too loud. You can't hear him. And eventually, if you stay there, he gets so quiet you forget he's there.
Yeah. Or the noise gets so loud.
Exactly. And I think there's nothing wrong with listening to worship music while you're doing that. If anything, that could help you more, especially in moments of silence, like feeling those negative emotions or feeling like you're slipping back into who you used to be or temptations, all these things. Like, why not put it on, to help? So, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, especially in this case. I think silence, when it says, listening for God in the silence, is, for me, I always refer to the noise of life. And that kind of goes with the radio analogy that I I talk about often. You know, the noise of life are those. If you think about it, it's running from thing to thing. It's constantly staying busy so we don't have to hear from him. It's allowing everything else to become so loud and so important that we forget what's really important.
Right.
So, you know, certainly do I think there are times one of the things we say here is just breathe, take moments to breathe. So in those cases, when you're reading scripture, first of all, you're doing exactly what God says. So he's not saying you got to sit there in complete silence. It's talking about the noise of life. So think of it this way. The silence is you getting alone.
That's
with that music
man.
On and with the word of God. That's
really
silence because the noise of the world at that point is turned down. It's shut off.
I love that.
So great question. You want to go ahead?
That was amazing.
And we'll probably save one of these.
Okay.
We've got to get better at the ums, man, and the likes.
I know, it's tough.
We can do it. I do it all the time, right? I speak for some reason. I speak publicly. I don't think I do it as much then.
I can talk. Which one would you like me to read, kids?
Let's go with number 4.
Okay. Last question of the day is, where's the line between trusting God with your finances and just not caring or thinking about money? I feel like when I leave it in God's hands, that was a quote, I get lazy and end up spending too much money.
I think there's a misunderstanding about what leaving it in God's hands means. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Jesus says, let me give you an example. In Matthew, Jesus says, the birds of the air don't worry about what they eat or where they sleep, right? And still they're taken care of. What God is saying, that doesn't mean we should just sit in a chair and go, oh, God will bring a piece of bread to my mouth. Mm-hmm. You know, because the birds still go around and do what they need to do. So I think in this case, leaving it in God's hands doesn't mean we don't follow other biblical principles. Yeah. So, for instance, the Bible talks about that we shouldn't be lazy and we should work.
That's right.
And that, you know, we should be responsible with and good stewards of our finances and all those kinds of things. And that we should take care of our family. And you can't take care of, you know, all those kinds of things.
Right.
So, leaving it in God's hands, you know, I get this feeling because some people think the only two options are be overly worried all the time or act like, or give up complete, just sit there and wait for something to happen. And I think the way we put it is, listen, you've just got to keep stepping and trusting that God is going to provide. It doesn't mean just sit there. Another analogy could be in the boat, you know, if there's a difference between Jesus said, Peter, step out of the boat, and Peter just sat there and said, make me step out of the boat. Right. Versus you do what you do and let God handle the miracle. Does that make sense? Yep. Does that make sense, production guy Blake? He said, yeah. So that's my opinion. I don't know if you have any different thoughts on that.
Sometimes I wonder if people get caught up in the idea of so you're going about life, right? Mm-hmm. And like you said, people are either don't care at all or they're overly anxious about everything. So they just, either way, you're not doing much of anything. Mm-hmm. Either way. Sometimes I wonder if we don't expect God to come through.
Oh, that's so good, and I think you're right on.
Like, we question so much whether God's going to come through instead of expecting him to come through.
You're right, man.
And like, dang it.
I know, me too.
I think if we went about life expecting God to come through, we wouldn't be frozen because we would be doing what we want. Like, we would be doing what we want to do within reason of what God tells us to do. We would be doing that confidently and with the expectation of God is with us and he's going to provide. And in that, I think that's where true freedom comes, because at that point, what is there to be what is there to be anxious about? There's nothing. Mm-hmm. Because if you actually expect, and to me, that's a mindset change. Like, going into
we need to put like a shot collar and then him buzz us every time.
Oh my gosh,
that'd be a good show.
That would be hilarious.
Blake's like, yeah, I'm in.
So to keep it short, I think it's a mindset change from going to wondering if God is going to come through to expecting God to come through. Because at the end of the day, people forget that God made that promise with us. Mm-hmm. That like he keeps his end of the bargain. Sure. Yes. So we should be able to expect him to come through, not just hope. There is hope, but we can expect him to come through.
Yeah. And being lazy, to encourage you, I right along with it. So to put it all together.
Yeah.
I love that. Expecting God to come through, but understanding that that doesn't mean that we don't follow his direction in the other places, meaning being lazy is not a biblical principle.
No.
And I'm not talking, we all have moments of, laziness, but we're talking about, it's very clear, Proverbs, numerous other places, being lazy is not a biblical principle. So trusting God can't mean just sitting around waiting, spending money, because then you're being lazy and you're not being a good steward of your money, right? If you spend too much money. So remember, do what God tells you to do and trust and expect that he's going to come through.
That's so good.
Because you can't control everything, everything else. Hopefully that answers your question. Guys, if we ever ask, I'm so sorry. We are not speaking well today.
I know, it's terrible.
If we ever do not fully answer a question that you've asked, please follow up with us. We had that happen in the live. Shoot a message back into the database using the link and just say, hey, I was the person that was referencing the question about money last week. Here's what I really meant. Because sometimes for us too, the only challenge with our format for having Real Talk is you're not right here for us to ask follow-up questions.
Exactly.
So thank you guys, though, for asking those and being real.
Oh, man,
and
I love it.
Asking for other people. I do want to say the person out there that sent the question about the mark of the beast and microchips, I know a lot of people are concerned about that. Yeah. We are going to talk about that.
Yes.
We'll probably talk about it on live. So join us this Thursday at 9 p.m. Plug for live. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
So join us live on Facebook at 9 p.m. for Real Talk Live. If you're on the podcast and you're from a different state other than Indiana and you've never actually watched that, you can just type in to your Facebook, the Remnant Church of Whitley County. It's going to have this really cool looking R.
That's right.
Go follow it, like it, etc. And then you guys will be there for us. We'd love to say hi virtually. Anyway, you got anything else?
Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I hope you guys enjoy watching me hit myself in the head a couple minutes ago, because I totally did that because I forgot a camera was on me. So, I said the word like again after speaking and talking about not trying to say it. So I hit myself in the head. Should try to remind myself to not say it. So, will there be a shot caller episode in the future? Who knows? Stay tuned.
That'd probably get so many views because people I've noticed love pain.
Yeah. So I just appreciate you guys. We come on here every week to just talk about life and what, the struggles and the victories and, what Jesus means and who he is. And man, to know that people listen to this every week and it's become part of their lives is such a humbling, crazy thing. And I just give it all the glory to God. And, for him to take someone like me who would have never expected to sit here in front of a camera, talking about what he's done for me and what I'm working through is just I never thought I'd be here. So thank you guys so much for listening and getting something out of it. You guys truly do mean the world to me. Thank you. I love you guys.
Yeah, I'm right there with him. I'm so very thankful for you guys. Not only it's humbling that you are willing to share. You spit everywhere, but
did I really?
Back to serious. I'm so thankful for you guys, and it's humbling that you allow us to be a part of your lives and you trust us to have these discussions with you. We're really thankful for that. There it is again. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Again, we would love for you to continue to give us questions and topics to talk about. We certainly are going to talk about our lives, but we love to have different things to discuss and different questions to talk about. We don't promise to always have the right answers, guys, but we do hope, if nothing else, that it drives you to seek the truth in Scripture.
Amen. And
the one thing that we can tell you 100% is wherever you're at right now, whatever struggles you're going through, I want you to know this, that God loves you, that Jesus came for you right where you're at, and that you are never too far gone, never too far lost, never too far messed up or broken for him to bring you home. He does love you, and I promise you that, and he's real, and he does amazing things in your life if we surrender to that and let him love us and heal us. So appreciate you guys. Join us, like I said, this Thursday live on Facebook for Real Talk Live.
Boom.
Also, really excited about this. Probably next week, we will have the coolest new intro for our web series.
This is,
the video. We've seen it. You guys aren't going to believe it.
I love it.
We love it. I love it even more.
I love it the most. So.
Hey, like, share, drop some comments below. We hope you guys have a great day, and truly God bless you.